denizens of the night. Welcome to another episode of the macabre, the terrifying. Broadcasting live from your apartment, I will be your guide through the witching hours. Tonight, we'll take a break from your regular run-of-the-mill things that go bump in the night. Tonight, we'll explore the very real horror of having your identity consumed bit by bit until you've lost sight of who you really are. This story is called The Apartment and is written by Christy Nogle. The city itself was horror enough to me. I dreamed of a smoking, stinking, yellow-gray blot on the horizon, and myself a train barreling toward it. I never reached the city in dreams, only in life. I arrived fearing all the stereotypical things that you're shown to fear in movies. Cold-eyed strangers, the indifferent rich, the muggings and all possible assaults on your body and property. I had little enough property. My body was stocky and strong. People never seemed able to violate it. If someone shoved me, I shoved back harder. I did not mind their blank stares. I understood them. People are the same all over. It was the spaces of the city that unnerved me. More than once, standing in the suck of air between two skyscrapers, I looked up and was caught in a rush of vertigo, much like the fear of heights. I walked past a park early on and noticed the shrubs all covered with greasy dust, caught little glimpses of grass inside as I hurried past, and it looked to me like astroturf, covered in lint and litter, like the filthy carpet of the trailer where I grew up. The tunnels were the worst. They seemed to have come out of me, a manifestation of my own nightmares, suffocating, claustrophobic dread, and at the same time a little thrill, like looking at a mannequin made in your image. And though I was unsettled from the very beginning, I thought it would lessen. There were reasons I had come. I tried to focus on them. Classes to take, difficult ones, and a part-time job that could lead to connections in the field I'd always dreamed of working in. I could build a reputation in the city and then move anywhere I liked. It was the job more than anything else that brought me here, something I had competed for and won, something I'd wanted badly, despite its being in the city. I even had an aunt a few dozen blocks away who had often lamented the fact that no one visited. I spent long afternoons in her cold apartment, smelling of garlic and copper. Nauseated by the deep brown wall-to-wall and the many-eyed paisley on the closed drapes, I held focus on her face and tried to remember her from back at family reunions and such, which made me think of green trees and burbling streams and breezes. I suppose it's just that everything feels like it's indoors, I told her. You never get outside, really. You're always inside. You'll get used to it, she said. And the garbage smell, I said. I couldn't remember the scent of clean nature anymore. I only remembered being able to open the door of whatever hovel and walk out into something better. You get used to anything, Aunt Ruth said. You do, to a point. I began to find myself immersing more and more into my work and my readings for class. I would become aware of the city, like coming awake in a strange room, and then lose awareness again. I forgot I was here, or maybe forgot I had not always been here. A girl at work became a friend. We adventured together, eating and drinking so much we had to take up running. A friend of a friend we met running became my neglectful lover. Good connections followed from the part-time job, and on the same week I was to graduate, a very decent offer came through. I thought some of my people from home might come to celebrate. They said they would, but backed out one by one. "They always say they'll come," said Ruth. I was forbidden to call her Aunt Ruth because it made her feel so old. Her hair was dyed the mocha brown of her carpet, but below she had the crinkled face of an apple doll. I'd been sharing a room, but now friends were keeping eyes out for apartments. Ruth looked harder than anyone, and she found one, right in this very building where even the halls smelled of garlic and copper. Or like shit, I realized just then. Old people shit. But we were already on our way to see the space. Ruth turned and locked her door. The halls were scuffed, with dark peeling paint, just like apartment building halls in all the movies you see about worn-out cities. The halls were nonsensical, just as you'd imagine, because of how these apartments had been sectioned off from larger spaces. We walked past many doors in a long hall that seemed to dead end, only to make a right-hand turn at the last minute. "I thought we'd be going to the stairs," I said. This new hall was narrower, with no doors on it. "It's just a little farther," Ruth said. "You're not saying it's on the same floor," I said, but it was. The hall seemed to end again and veered to the right at the last minute, and at the end of another doorless hall, a door stood open, an impatient-looking lady waiting in a white-painted, wood-floored space inside. It was just like in the movie scenes of young people viewing apartments in the city. The tiny space seemed large to us, those floors a marvel. The fireplace could not be used, but would add atmosphere. The window looked out on horrors, but brought in buckets of cheerful light. This is someone else's dream, I thought. "Are you sure?" I said, just as scripted. "All this for this price?" It didn't seem fair. These were someone else's hopes coming true. And this was a trap, too, a way for the city to keep me close. But still I flushed and stammered as I signed the papers. I mirrored back the real estate lady's broad, wet, desperate smile. Ruth looked on, triumphant. A rush of years, a wall of work shot through with little glints of drama and glamour. I saw some of the city's finer sides and sampled of its terrors. I no longer felt unsettled all the time, but I did sometimes float outside of myself. In the midst of a party, bringing out hors d'oeuvres, I might feel I was watching a movie. A ridiculous movie, actually, based on an outdated fantasy of city life. The work lunches and dinners were just like that, too. I heard the charming repartee and smelled the wine, but nothing was real. In bed, I might wonder if sex ever happened, or if the room had just dimmed to black and then faded back into morning. Ruth would land one knock on the wall behind my bed when she fixed her breakfast, and I would knock back. I found myself on the street more than once, pulse pounding, a stranger far back but gaining on me, all the windows dim, all the doors locked. I'd start out feeling the fear in my body, and then hover back over my shoulder, judging, thinking how stupid it was to be in a scene so cliché. I'd hover on ahead into something else, some other scene. A wolfish person at work would corner me, and again I'd only hover ahead to another, better scene, where morning faded back in through the window and Ruth gave her collegial knock. The gathering at the lawyer's office was yet another cliché. So they finally visited, some part of me thought, but a truer part knew these weren't my people anymore. We all gasped on cue, "Oh, no one had thought it would be that much." And then they directed disgust and accusations at me. A windfall, everyone's dream. I'd never realized Ruth owned her place. The savings she'd left would buy mine as well, just barely. For the first time in my life, I had so many options. I could go and be wealthy somewhere else. I could even retire, but not here, or probably not here. Some part of me struggled over the decisions, brought out an actual calculator and a pad. But I hovered away from that scene because it was settled. I would buy my place and knock down the wall between it and Ruth's. I'd need to keep earning well to get the permits and start the renovations. I would never get away. I was lacking sleep and much dragged down by bureaucracy over the next few months. When I finally had the chance to open those paisley drapes, I nearly took them down with me in a faint to the floor. The scene outside was incomprehensible. Bright clouds floating in an aqua sky, rolling hills and trees, a burbling stream, and a clutch of small, shoddy homes. I knelt and pushed the window up as far as it would go, perhaps 2 inches. And though the sounds of cars and the sights of the city faded back in immediately, the scent lingered strange and green, with catches of catalpa, or maybe honeysuckle, damp earth, wood fire. I shut the window, brought those drapes quite tight again, and turned back to the room to breathe deeply of the closer air, which had no smell and no taste. "I'd get used to it," Ruth once said, and I had. The carpet had been pulled up, revealing floors much like my own, but more stained. There'd been a cat here sometime. There'd been a lot of life here, everywhere and all around. Ruth's life was still here. She stood before me for an instant, featureless except for the glossy, dyed hair. She faded out, and what faded in was an image of the space, far in the future, when all the renovations were done. It was bright and sophisticated, the decor all eclectic and witty like something from a magazine. Maybe it would be in a magazine. Certainly I had the connections to make that happen. A place like this would make me more important too, wouldn't it? I would rise in my profession even more quickly than I already had. This is someone else's dream, I thought. And then, no, this is my dream. This is what I've always wanted. But I couldn't convince myself, not even for a moment. It was such a small and pathetic dream, and it wasn't mine. It wasn't even Ruth's. She'd been content to sit on her money in a closed-up room and complain about the family. It was the city's dream, I realized. It was what the city wanted, to build and rebuild, to go forward and then back. I was simply a hand in the city's great project. And I tried to hover into the future to a time when it was done, when I could at least enjoy the fruits of the labor. But I'd lost that power. I had to suffer through every decision, every argument on the phone. I had to watch and worry over the workers, and then make myself, somehow, fit for work. The knock would come with the morning light, and I would not have slept. I would reach to knock back and find no wall there anymore. I think that many of us can relate to our poor protagonist. Have you ever woken up to the realization that your days bleed one into the next, with nothing to mark the passage of time but sleep? Now that is true horror. If you liked this story, please check out the author in the links below. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this one. And remember, don't fall asleep.